We compare ourselves to polystyrene, to foam plastic, as you saw that our material is kind of fluffy. So basically we cannot, of course, replace plastic bags, but maybe someday with our technology. And in terms of comparison with polystyrene, it is as durable as polystyrene, well, maybe not 500 years, a little bit less, but still durable. It is waterproof at the same level as polystyrene. It is thermally insulating, again, at the same level as polystyrene. It is 3 times stronger, and it has a higher fire resistance. So actually, in some, as you see, in some properties, our material is superior, so it has a better properties.
Today I chat with Julia Bialetska, co-founder and CEO of a Techstars portfolio company called S.Lab. S.Lab is innovating on the frontier of sustainable packaging, creating plant-based materials to create a biodegradable alternative to plastic packaging and synthetic glue. Today we chat about eco-friendly packaging innovation. Julia covers their origin story, the materials that they use, as well as industry partnerships and challenges faced in regards to scaling the company. This is Earth ABC featuring Julia Bialetska. Hello, Julia. Thanks for joining me today.
Hi, Sean. Thank you very much for having me here.
All right, so we have someone who's in the realm of like circular economy, and you've developed sustainable packaging. I think that's a very exciting topic. And from what you told me earlier, is your origin story that you were surfing on the beach with your husband while you were in your digital nomad journey, and you noticed a bunch of trash littered on the beach, and that kind of kickstarted your journey with S.Lab. Could you walk us through that story and then also the problem that you realized with further research?
Yeah, so definitely that was the way that you described that. I was managing distributed remote teams before this became a mainstream during the COVID time. So it was like 7 years ago. And I had the luxury at that time to travel while I work because all of my work was distributed or remote. So we took then again this advantage and took this opportunity with my husband to go to Asia. We traveled in Thailand, Singapore, Malaysia, and then ended up in Bali. This was like our final destination, we thought, but it was just a start, as it seems now. So yeah, we were doing surfing sessions, enjoying this beautiful life. The most amazing sunsets are in that paradise island. And one morning we just went to do our another session, and instead of beautiful seaside, we saw huge piles of plastic, and it was like huge mountains of this plastic. So this was not just, that someone threw plastic while they were eating or something. This was the garbage that came from the ocean, from those like plastic trash islands in the ocean. And they have this kind of funny saying that in Bali there are 3 seasons: dry season, rainy season, and a trash season. So that's the time when all of this trash comes to the seaside. So of course everyone knows that plastic is bad and like no one likes it basically. But when I saw this amount of plastic and how horrible it is to the nature, it was like such a devastating picture that I just could not forget about it. So we started to talk with my husband about that all the time. But our approach was not to think about that, well, how bad is the situation, but more try to see what we could do as, just 2 individuals. Maybe there is something that we could actually change, or if there is anything that we could change. So we quickly realized that overall humanity, the same as us, would be happy to use something different instead of plastic. But there is no such convenient material, I would say. So that's what I think that was the biggest insight that we discovered, that it's not enough to just create something that is natural, organic, eco-friendly, but it has to have the same properties, or at least match the properties of the materials that we use right now. So of course we could make some small sacrifices, but not to sacrifice the whole property of the material. So that was our like big first insight. And then we started to build up on that. We knew that in order to create a new material, you need to have 2 components: one that provides structure or serves as the matrix, and the second is like a binder or a glue. So we thought that our goal, our mission, is to find those two components that would be absolutely natural, and that could be returned back to the nature, and they would degrade back to the nature in the same primary way it was. So we started to look for those materials, for those components, and first we found hemp. It's a very strong organic plant, and it's been used in so many different areas, different fields. We don't even realize that. But the thing is that hemp is quite traditional plant for Ukraine. Our national clothes is made out of hemp fabrics. So we really knew about this plant. So it was kind of, going back to our roots, which was also kind of interesting in that way. So we thought, well, let's use hemp as our structure, as the matrix. And then let's try to find a binder that could bind this hemp together. And that's where the challenge started, I would say, because we were trying to glue hemp with the glues that we could find on the market. And all of them basically are synthetic. So when we were gluing organic or plant with this synthetic glue, the biocomposite, it could not go back to the nature in the same way because we were creating a polymerization process. And basically polymerization process is not revertible back. So we understood it doesn't really make much sense, and had to go back and to kind of start our research again to find this ideal binder. And that's when we discovered mycelium. Mycelium is a network of mushroom roots, and it creates a wide network of the nets and binds all the particles together. So kinda you can compare this to the spider that creates nets. When the fly gets into its nets, it starts to cover this fly with the nets. So it's something similar happening in this case where we mix this agricultural plant like hemp hemp stem with the mycelium. Mycelium starts to create nets and binds it all together.
Well, thank you for sharing the story of how you saw all that plastic in Bali, how even the people in the area were saying how plastic season is its own season. I think it's very funny, but also very sad that that's something that is very widespread in that region. And very cool how you kind of explore the different structure and then the binders to kind of create this like new packaging. And it's cool that not only are you considering recyclable materials, but also ones that fit the properties that you need to meet for the standard packaging. And so in terms of the sustainable packaging solutions, how come it took so long for your solution and other similar solutions to be developed? Because I know this issue has been plaguing a bunch of people like you and me. I hate seeing plastic and just trash on our beaches. So why has it taken so long for something good to come out of it?
Well, so many reasons, and this is such a great question. I think we should be asking this more frequently. I think I would say maybe the first one that is on the surface, probably education. So of course, when the plastic appeared, we were not educated, or we didn't take into the consideration any potential consequences from using it. We were just like so excited about the properties of this material, that it is durable, it is protective, it gives basically us everything what we ever wanted, and no one was thinking like long term what will it bring in the long term. So I think this was like the first part why we even have this problem, is that basically we but what I learned recently, that it was also like a quite long time or quite long period to implement plastic and you start using it in the packaging industry or in any other industry. So it also took some time to to implement this material and implement its usage. So I think that's what kind of is happening with any other material as well. And then, of course, I would say there was no urge, probably, because yes, like we understand it is bad, but then it also comes to companies, to big corporations, to be the leaders on this transition, I would say, to another materials, and to actually lead by the example. So, of course, then I think then education is again the primary problem, that companies were not educated, and then the customers were not educated, and they were just using plastic, and no one thought of any potential then future, what would happen if we use this material, this type of the material. And then I guess when we realized this, those companies, customers, it was a bit late already. And in terms of all the alternatives that I saw and I see on the market right now, it all comes to the industrial scale. So if you want to have an impact and to create a new material, you have to produce it at the industrial scale. So it has to be quite high volume. So it is quite easy to create something in the laboratory scale, but then when it comes to proper amounts that would suffice those big companies and the need in the packaging, it's a very different scale and a very different level. So it is much harder to actually maintain the continuous process of manufacturing of the new material, making sure that there is a supply always of this type of material, and that everything goes smoothly, because we had many years to develop plastic and polystyrene industries, to develop machinery for them, to develop equipment, to automate all the processes. Now we have to do the same with those new components. And then when you work with natural ingredients, it is more difficult in that sense, that it's not as stable as plastics, let's say. So I think that's those two main issues, like that there were no enough education, and then not enough urge to switch to something different. And then when it comes to new solutions, they really need to work towards this kind of industrial scale and overall scalability of the material.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. I like how you summed it up for me. I was just gonna kind of give a recap of the education need, the urge, and then the industrial scale. But with that said, like, you're already having pilots with some big companies like JTI, L'Oreal, so very much like you're in alignment with what you're saying. Could you walk us through the partnership that you have with L'Oreal? I'm sure other people would be excited to hear what that looks like.
Yeah, and I'm always proud and a bit humble to say that L'Oreal is actually our first customer. So in this sense, it shows first that we were on one hand a bit lucky to get in touch with them in such early stage, but on the other hand, it shows that when we started to work on our material, there was already a big urge, and those companies were already on a lookout for any type of the solution that could replace packaging that they are currently using, that they are not happy with because of the sustainability, plastics, and so on. So with L'Oreal, we had like a successful case that we were introduced to them, and there were like early adopters, kind of mind who worked with us, with the team. So they really wanted to implement something with us, and they did put an effort into discussions with us, into learning what our material is capable of, what we as a team, as a company, as a production facility can do. So they actually did invest their time, their resources to make this work. And they did work with us together to launch a pilot. So we did a pilot where we produced the packaging for the set of the shampoo and conditioner. That was like a promo packaging. And then they distributed this set into their customer base. And then after that, they still wanted to continue, go even further with us. So they did the audit process. They launched the audit process on us. That's like their requirement for any new company that they work with beyond the pilot stage. They do an audit. So they had a third-party auditor who came to our production facility to learn about our processes, about all the types of social security for our employees, where do we get the raw material, how we treat the raw material, if you have all the like first aid kit and fire how do you call this, those things for to protect from fire. So basically they did this process on us, and after that we were lucky again to pass this audit process, and now we are in their database as their supplier of the sustainable packaging.
Awesome. So from pilot to basically now an official supplier
Yep.
of L'Oreal, you're essentially just wrapping up the compliance process. In terms of the volume for the pilot, what did that look like?
Well, pilot is not, of course, big. It was up to 1,000, I think, packaging units with them. But then we also have other kind of big companies, as you mentioned, that will work on the pilots. And normally, pilot is not something big because they just try to get into this new material and then to discover how other team members in their company react to the material, how the customers react to the material, how the higher management reacts to the material. So for them, it's kind of also test and trial. And then when they see the mostly positive feedback, of course, they will go further. And as we see with big corporations, and maybe that's a tip for other startups that try to get into those corporations, that of course we always suggest by ourselves that we don't want to suddenly change all of your packaging in one day. Let's move step by step and maybe choose one of the brands that you think would be a better fit for this kind of green, sustainable packaging solution. And then let's see if we can make something for this specific brand. And then if you're satisfied with the reaction, we can discuss how we can move forward with other brands and so on.
Gotcha. And you mentioned you're trying to see like how the customer reacts, how the employees react, and so on and so forth. What are the customers saying about the packaging? Can they even tell the difference?
I think yes. So I always like to show the our packaging. So that's how the material looks like. And yeah, like from kind of at a glance, it does look similar to polystyrene or styrofoam that we are trying to replace. But when you start to touch it, it's actually a very different feeling. So our material has a very velvet surface. It's very nice and pleasant to touch it, in contrary to the polystyrene that has this awful squeaky sound when you try to move it. When you break it, those small items are everywhere. So it's a very different than feeling with our packaging. So of course, customers are in love with that, and probably it seems, at least for me, that customers are more willing to switch and to see this transition towards better packaging. It's, of course, more companies who are more concerned about the perception of the customers, about the properties of the material, if it will protect their products, how it will look like on the shelf, and so on. But then when it comes to the customers, there are so many researchers already that customers are ready to pay more for the product that is in a sustainable packaging. So I think there is more adoption in terms of the simple customers like you and me that would rather choose a product that is in a sustainable packaging, and probably would neglect how it does look, like if it doesn't look so shiny as we are used to the plastics.
Hmm. Gotcha. And so you mentioned that the sustainable packaging, it needs to have like, again, the same properties or very similar to the standards of the existing plastic packaging. So how does the S.Lab's packaging compare in terms of the performance and the cost?
Yeah, so we compare ourselves to polystyrene, to foam plastic, as you saw that our material is kind of fluffy. So basically, we cannot, of course, replace plastic bags, but maybe someday with our technology. And in terms of comparison with polystyrene, it is as durable as polystyrene. Well, maybe not 500 years, a little bit less, but still durable. It is waterproof at the same level as polystyrene. It is thermally insulating, again, at the same level as polystyrene. It is 3 times stronger, and it has a higher fire resistance. So actually, as you see, in some properties, our material is superior, so it has a better properties. And then in terms of the cost, at the moment, it is 20-40% more if if customers use our packaging. But of course, in the long term, we aim to match the price of polystyrene and to be at the same price point. So it's not a barrier for the companies. But actually, we also have some additional ways of decreasing the price as we have our own technology, how the material is shaped into the final form, and this decreases the cost of the injection molds or molding tools. So at the end, it actually might be already cheaper for our customers to use our material.
Gotcha. And by nature, pun intended, you're using materials that come from Earth. It's like the hemp, the mycelium. And so how are you ensuring that you have enough supply at all times while also not completely taking all of like the hemp and mycelium that might be like on Earth?
Yeah, so first of all, we do not take mycelium from anywhere. We have the first culture that was grown for us, or the parent culture that was grown for us in the Botanical Institute, and we just recultivate it all the time inside of our own process. So we have an enough supply of it for as much as we need, uh, because our process just built the way that it can be regenerated all the time. And then we use straws of hemp that is like is a plant waste. So basically it remains on the fields after the harvest. But as a plant waste, as this component, we can use any other type of the plant that is available to us in the location where we produce. So it could be hemp as we use currently. It could be also linen, wheat, corn stems. It could be even tea trees leftovers. So basically, I don't foresee shortage of this type of the material unless we stop doing agriculture at all.
Gotcha. Okay, makes sense. And in terms of like the regulatory landscape, what regulations and like policies are currently driving and will drive in the future, like the adoption of the sustainable packaging?
Yeah, of course, I would say that leader on that side is European Union, because there are many directives how to use packaging, what type of the materials are allowed to use, and there is a EU packaging waste directive that mandates that by 2030 all the packaging has to be recyclable or usable. So you can then already imagine that this means that everyone has to transition from whatever they are using right now towards sustainable alternatives. So of course, this means that I think European Union is kind of on top of those regulations. But of course, all the other countries, continents, they also aim to get into this net zero goals or ESG goals. And then, of course, they also have their own directives and goals. So I would say that most of the, if like I sum up, that most of the world wants to transition towards more sustainable approach in everything by 2050. So of course, European Union says that they will do that by 2030, but then we'll see. But then all the rest of the world is committed to do this by 2050. So I think it does seem like it's 25 years ahead, but in reality, I think for European Union, it's only 5 years ahead, and there is so much things that have to be done. So I think it's not that much time actually.
Gotcha. And which of these like industries do you think will benefit the most from this plant-based packaging and will be those that adopt the most quickly?
Oh, I mean, the answer is that whoever adopts the faster gets all the benefits of being the early adopter and being the first user, and having the most experience. So in our experience, we see that beauty, self-care, cosmetics, electronics, fashion, and decor industries are very open towards shifting towards new solutions, new packaging, and they look into any type of the material, not only for the packaging, but for their products as well. Like if you look into the cosmetics, I think it's been many, many years when they're trying to use as many natural components in the products themselves as possible. And now they are looking into wrapping this all up in the, sustainable material as well, or sustainable packaging. So I would say that those industries are already moving fast, and all the others will of course follow. And like there are, of course, there is a great example of IKEA, who is already working towards getting to the sustainable packaging, and like they have their own goals to get there as soon as possible. And they their goal is to remove all the plastic packaging by 2028 and switch to biomaterials. So basically in 3 years, when we go to IKEA and buy something, it should be all plant-based packaging.
Yeah, more reason to love IKEA. I know I'm a big fan.
Yeah, definitely.
And you're not only a co-founder, but also the CEO of your company, S.Lab. And one thing that you talked about is the massive gap in female funding. Yet you raised capital and went through the Techstars program. Please walk us through like how you navigated that and how you plan to continue successfully navigating this for your startup.
Yeah, again, thank you so much for this question. I think it's not news that female founders get only 2% of the whole funding, and this is not 20%; it's 2%. So just like it is such a small amount, and I really don't have a great answer how to navigate that. I just think that you need to move forward, to push forward. We need all the support that we can get. We need the right men behind us, or like together with us, who also advocate for the rights, for some basic rights, and then for the funding, and then helping us in those. So I think there are so many great programs right now. And actually Techstars, the program that we went through is Techstars Sustainability Paris. So they are very intentional about supporting female founders. And I think they have like 40% of their portfolio consists of female founders. So you have to be really intentional about that and really set the goals, set the KPIs, and work towards that to get the female founders, to support them, and so on. So of course, as you said, we did raise capital. We raised up to 1 million euros so far, which is a bit more than $1 million. And I like to say that if I was able to do that, then any other female can do that as well. And of course, probably it took me more effort than if it would be a man on my position. But still, I like to say that of course it's tough for me, and but then I can serve as a role model, and then I can create a positive example not only for other founders but for the investors. So the investors who invested into us, they are more than keen to invest into other female founders. So I believe that this is creating circles, like on the water, that they invested into our startup that is female-led. They see our results. They understand that we are successful. We are running pilots. We are raising more, and then they don't have this bias, or at least less bias, when they look into the founders and if it is a female founder. So I would say just like those examples, and being close with other female founders, but having also great men with us who also advocate for us, it's a huge contribution to solving this problem.
Most definitely. Appreciate your candidness in your response. And yeah, just like the ripple effect of like one investor invests in you guys, then that pretty much increases the level of trust for other female-led ventures. I like that.
Yeah.
Very last question is just in general, like the future of packaging, like you talked about it a little bit. What trends and innovations are you seeing? And then what's next specifically for S.Lab?
So I would say there are two key trends. Of course, transition towards natural materials. But at the same time, there is another cool trend to use as less packaging as possible. So I think those are the two biggest trends that will follow, and that will continue for many, many years. So of course, we are on that side where we are plant-based, natural material, when it is actually easy to use us because there is no recycling afterwards. So you can just use S.Lab packaging and throw it into the soil. It biodegrades in 30 days without any trace. But then I also like to talk about this another trend, to use as less packaging as possible. So there are examples where packaging could be returned back to the producer after it is delivered, or after the product is delivered. And then the producer takes this packaging and packs their products again, and then it could be reused many times. So basically, we don't need to throw away this packaging and use it only one time. So overall, there is a transition from single-use packaging to many times use of the packaging. So I think these are two main trends. If I would be a company right now, I would be looking towards those two. I think everything wraps up around that. So of course, in S.Lab, we aim to continue what we are doing, to continue building our technology, to make sure that we can expand even further. So we are optimizing our production line to fit into the so-called mobile units, and then those mobile units could be deployed anywhere around the world. And like our mission is to make sustainable packaging available and accessible. So this means that with those mobile units, it could be available at any location of the world. And with this decentralized approach, it will also make it cheap to produce.
Awesome. So the trends that you're riding like a tailwind are the natural materials, and then also the usage of less materials.
Yep.
And at the same time, you guys are driving your costs much lower, and then it'll make it pretty much a no-brainer for these companies to adopt the S-Labs plant-based packaging.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, appreciate you taking the time to walk us through like an exciting future that awaits us. So yeah, thank you, Julia.
Thank you so much, Sean. Happy to be here.
Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this interview, follow along on EarthABC's LinkedIn to stay connected and never miss what's going on in climate tech. If you'd like to reach out or you're interested in coming on as a guest, feel free to connect with me, Sean Pack, on LinkedIn. We're always looking for inspiring ventures and founders in the climate space to feature on the show. Hope you enjoyed. Until next time.